Welcome back, curious minds. Have you ever thought about what life was like before writing? What if I told you that the single most powerful invention in human history wasn't the wheel, electricity, or the internet, but writing? Today, we're diving into one of the greatest turning points in human history, the invention of writing. Imagine a world with no books, no messages, no history recorded. That's the world before cuneiform, the very first writing system, and it all began over 5,000 years ago in the dusty plains of ancient Mesopotamia on a slab of wet clay with a single stylus. This is the story of cuneiform, the world's first writing system, and how it changed everything we know about communication, knowledge, and civilization. But it wasn't just about scribbles on clay. Writing changed everything, from how people traded and ruled to how they shared stories, preserved knowledge, and built civilizations. In this episode, we'll explore how it all began, what those early clay tablets actually said, and how those marks in mud still shape our lives today. Get ready to discover the power of the pen before pens even existed. Hello, my curious fellows. I welcome you to episode 2 of our Ancient Civilizations series. So, what exactly was cuneiform? Well, the name itself comes from Latin, cuneus, meaning wedge, and that's a clue to how it worked. The ancient Sumerians used a reed stylus, kind of like a pointy stick, to press wedge-shaped marks into soft clay tablets. That's why it's called cuneiform, wedge writing. At first, the marks were simple pictures. A fish stood for a fish, a jar meant a jar. But over time, those drawings evolved. They became symbols, not just for things, but for sounds, actions, even ideas. And that's when writing truly began. Cuneiform was used for everything. People recorded business deals, laws, religious prayers, royal commands, and yes, even school homework. Some tablets we found are literally ancient students practicing their writing. And one of the most famous works ever written in cuneiform, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the world's oldest surviving epic poem. It tells the story of a mighty king, his wild friend, and a search for immortality. But cuneiform wasn't just about words on clay, it was about turning speech into memory and memory into history. And that was a game changer for humanity. So, where did it all begin? The answer takes us back to Mesopotamia, an ancient region that lies in what is now modern-day Iraq. Mesopotamia means the land between two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. This fertile land gave rise to some of the world's first cities and the world's first writing. Cities like Uruk, Ur, and Babylon weren't just centers of farming and trade. They were powerhouses of knowledge, religion, government, and writing. Thousands of years later, those very tablets are still being found, buried beneath ruins but almost perfectly preserved. Why? Because they were made of clay, dried, baked, and hardened over time. Archaeologists have discovered hundreds of thousands of these ancient texts. Each one opens a window into the daily life of people who lived over 4,000 years ago. And today, those tablets rest in museums across the world, in the British Museum in London, the Louvre in Paris, and the Iraqi National Museum in Baghdad. Each tablet is more than just an artifact. It's a whisper from the past, a frozen moment in time, a reminder that even the oldest civilizations had something to say and found a way to say it. Let's go back over 5,000 years into the past. Cuneiform first appeared around 3200 BCE in the ancient city of Uruk, one of the very first cities ever built by humans. This was a time before kingdoms, before iron tools, and even before the wheel was commonly used. And yet the people of Uruk had already begun doing something extraordinary. They were writing. These early scribes carved symbols into clay, not to tell stories at first, but to keep records, track trade, and organize society. And what's truly incredible? Cuneiform didn't vanish overnight. It was used for over 3,000 years, a writing system so powerful and practical it outlasted the very civilizations that created it. As new empires rose, like the Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians, they didn't replace cuneiform. They adapted it. They used it to rule, to teach, and to tell their own stories. But time moved on. Languages changed. Cultures evolved. And by around 100 CE, cuneiform quietly faded from use. It was gradually replaced by alphabetic scripts like Greek, Aramaic, and Latin, which were simpler and faster to learn. And just like that, the last clay tablet was written. The wedge-shaped marks fell silent. But the legacy of cuneiform? It lived on in the laws, the myths, and the memories it preserved for future generations. Our story begins over 5,000 years ago with a brilliant and innovative people known as the Sumerians. They lived in Mesopotamia, the fertile land between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, what we now call Iraq. This land was more than just fields and rivers. It was home to some of the earliest cities ever built. Uruk, Eridu, places where farming, trade, religion, and government were already taking shape. But the Sumerians did something far greater than just build cities. They gave the world its first written language. They invented cuneiform, the first true writing system in human history. And that invention would forever change how humans shared knowledge, kept records, and remembered the past. At first, writing wasn't for everyone. Only a select group of people were allowed to learn it, called scribes. Becoming a scribe wasn't easy. It meant years of intense training copying symbols over and over onto clay tablets. It required patience, skill, and lots of discipline. But once trained, scribes held powerful roles in society. They worked for kings, temples, businesses, and sometimes on their own. They recorded laws, trade deals, prayers, letters, even stories. Scribes were the information keepers of their world, the ones who made sure that nothing important was forgotten. Thanks to them, we know what the Sumerians did, what they believed, and how they lived thousands of years later. Cuneiform did something truly revolutionary. It turned spoken words into permanent records. And that was a game changer. Before writing, everything had to be remembered. Stories, laws, deals, they all depended on someone's memory. And memories fade. People forget. Details change. But with cuneiform, information could finally be written down, preserved, and passed on. Governments used it to create laws, rules that stayed the same from one ruler to the next. Priests used it to record prayers and rituals, keeping religious traditions alive for generations. Historians wrote down events, battles, kings, natural disasters, so they wouldn't be lost to time. And writers, they told stories like the Epic of Gilgamesh, which still inspires people over 4,000 years later. Cuneiform changed communication from something temporary, spoken, and soon forgotten into something timeless. And here's the amazing part, the device you're watching this video on, the letters on your screen, the very idea of writing this script. It all traces back to those first wedge-shaped marks pressed into clay. From tablets to ink to books to binary code, writing evolved, but it all began with cuneiform. Cuneiform didn't just document human history, it made history possible. You might think cuneiform was created to write epic stories or sacred texts, but the truth is, its origins were far more practical. Cuneiform was first invented for one simple reason: record-keeping. Picture this, you're managing a temple or palace in a bustling city like Uruk. Thousands of people rely on you. You need to keep track of grain supplies, livestock, laborers, taxes, and trade. Or maybe you're a merchant who's just exchanged goats for barley. You need a receipt to prove the deal happened. Memory alone wasn't enough. So the Sumerians created something better, a way to write things down. Cuneiform began as a tool for organization. It made transactions clear, fair, and permanent. It helped people keep records and, more importantly, keep each other honest. But as cities grew and societies became more complex, so did cuneiform's purpose. It became a tool of government used to pass laws, a tool of religion used to preserve prayers and rituals, a tool of education used in schools to train scribes, and a tool of legacy used to share myths, history, and philosophy. Without cuneiform, we might never have known about Hammurabi's Code, the world's first known written legal system, or the deep and powerful mythology of ancient Mesopotamia. What started as numbers on clay became the foundation of civilization. From simple trade receipts to legendary epics, cuneiform was the spark that lit the fire of written human history. It reminds us that the things we take for granted, writing, reading, recording, once had to be invented. So the next time you text a friend, jot down a note, or write a caption, remember, you're part of a legacy that began over 5,000 years ago with a humble reed and a lump of clay. If you enjoyed this journey back in time, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to The Universal Knower, your portal to the ancient and unknown. And let us know in the comments, what do you think the world would be like if writing was never invented? Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring. See you in the next episode where we'll explore the Code of Hammurabi, the world's first legal system.